Leafs fam, hockey world, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James. Thank you so much for being with us. It feels like it's been forever, right? No worries. We are back at it. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to podcast the heck out of some real lively, entertaining, and useful Leafs discussion. Mike Augello will be by. He and I will praise all things St. Kyle Dubas, who conducted his first real order of business as Leafs general manager, signing up 4 young players who may one day help the Leafs get to where they want to go and win a Stanley Cup championship. In the meantime, a few of them have more work to do with the Toronto Marlies, who continue their push towards a Calder Cup title. More on that in a few minutes. We're also going to dream up, or at least pour over, some potential trade scenarios between the Canes and the Leafs. The Leafs have good players. The Canes have defensive help in spades, and we know the Leafs require more help on the blue line. Mike Augello's ready to go. I'm ready to go. You're ready to go. So let's go. Let's pod. The Leafs Convo starts now. And we are officially underway now because my podcast better half has finally joined us. Mr. Augello, how are you?
Good morning, Norman. I'm well. I'm better than I have been over the last few months, with the weather being sunny and beautiful in downtown Buffalo, as opposed to the rain and the snow that I think depresses most people. And I'm looking forward to the Calder Cup conference final that begins Saturday and continues on Sunday at Ricoh Coliseum.
Oh, Buffalo, New York, that wonderful tropical setting. It's certainly incredible. It honestly makes London, Ontario seem like it's smack dab in the middle of the South Pacific or something. And it's incredible how the weather can affect your mood and your disposition. I would say it doesn't, but my wife and my kids would testify to otherwise. And what is true, though, is how our moods and how we feel is affected by the goings-on of our favorite hockey team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Overall, we should be feeling a lot better than we have, I don't know, for the previous 20 years. But, you know, there's still work to do here. And St. Dubas has made some interesting signings over the past 48 hours to add a little jump to the step of Leaf fans who are hungry for more.
Yeah, it has to be said, and in all fairness, at least a couple of them were in the pipeline before Kyle Dubas took over as general manager. Igor Ozganov, the defenseman, a 25-year-old Russian defenseman, played in the KHL since he was 17. He was, Brendan Shanahan and Lou Lamoriello and Nikita Zaitsev, who played with him at CSKA Moscow, they all met with him last summer, and it's been rumored for a while that he was Toronto bound. Now, you have to consider here, he's a big defenseman, 6'2", 215 pounds, right-hand shot, good speed, heavy shot. He won the hardest shot at the KHL All-Star game. But, from what I have heard from people over in Russia is that hockey IQ is not high on his decision-making is sometimes questionable with him, which to my mind limits him to being sort of a guy and not a top 4 defenseman. So that would slot him in as a potential replacement for a Connor Carrick or a Roman Polak. He is not the top 4 guy that the Leafs are desperately looking for. In fact, I think they need 2 top 4 guys, but we'll talk about that later. Par Lindholm, the other free agent, that's been in the works for it sounds like at least a month, but maybe even more than that. He's 26 years old, played for the Swedes in the Olympics in Pyeongchang, had a big year this year. I think it was 47 points, finished second on his club team in scoring. But here's the warning. The guy who led the team in scoring is a former Leaf. I think it's Joachim Lindstrom. Who had a cup of coffee with the Leafs a few years ago. So you always have to be careful regarding the stats in the Swedish league or in the KHL and how they translate over to the NHL. Lindholm is reportedly a good two-way guy. He's really smart, but he's not the fleetest of foot. So again, this is a guy who I think is in the mix for the 4th line center role with Miro Aaltonen and Freddie Gauthier. And the other 2 signings were draft picks that, it was imperative they get them signed because the time where the exclusive negotiating rights for these players was running out. Pierre Engvall is another one of those Leaf project 7th-round picks. He was picked in 2014. That was a Dave Nonis, Dave Morrison draft. So we can't even credit Hunter or Dubas on that. But he's been over in the SHL for a few years and played at the highest level in the SHL last year. Came over to the Marlies and has been essentially a point-per-game player the last part of the regular season and into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He's a big guy, 6'3", 200 pounds. So, and he's quick. So I think with a year or two in the AHL, he could be an NHL player. And Jesper Lindgren is the other pick. He was part of that 2015 draft, a defenseman. I think he's a project. They signed him to a 3-year deal, and I think they'll probably put him in the developmental mode with the Marlies.
Yeah, a lot of cooks stirring this pot. It's interesting that Kyle Dubas inherited a lot of these players in terms of scouting them, signing them, cultivating them, and perhaps one day these players actually graduating to the NHL level. Though, while you did mention Dave Morrison and Lou Lamoriello, and there are scouts involved in the elevation of these players, the signings still represent a bit of a ceremonial move and a moment for the Kyle Dubas era with the Toronto Maple Leafs as general manager, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, these players were in the pipeline. It was a necessity to sign Engvall and Lindgren before their exclusive draft rights ran out. So this is, I mean, and not taking anything away from Kyle Dubas, but his signature move or his really first stamp of approval on a maneuver. This is not it. It's the first move of his administration. But again, this was just, this was office work that needed to be done. Lindholm was rumored to be signed earlier this month, and Ozhiganov had been rumored to be Toronto bound since, like I said, October or November of last year. So I think this was just, let's get this business done. But I think with Kyle Dubas, the moves that he's going to make, the moves that will have his stamp on them, are coming and could be of a rather large and important variety.
Ooh, Mike, so intriguing, so enticing. We'll get to it in just a moment. Thank you very much for listening to the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James, along with Mike Augello. Download the Radio Public app. Click on it many times. Send it to your friends. You can go to Radio Public to listen to our podcast in its first running. Then head over to our YouTube page where there's lots of interaction, a lot of content. I've broken things up into playlists. I know that doesn't sound overly complicated, but it does help in terms of you looking for certain aspects of the podcast or certain topics, and you can go ahead and do that right now. While you're there, please like and subscribe to the page. You hear me repeat that over and over again. I'm getting sick of it myself, but we are in growth mode, and it's important that we get the word out. If you can help us do that, thank you very much. We have some shout outs coming up later in this podcast. Plus we will get into potential trade targets for the Maple Leafs that Mike has written about for Hockey Buzz. I'm looking forward to that. So, Mike, Igor Ozhiganov, you mentioned that he's got some raw skill. Perhaps fans should not start making avatars and printing off Igor Ozhiganov jerseys or anything like that too soon, because we just don't know if he'll be able to work his way up into a top 4 position with the Maple Leafs. He's got some hockey IQ issues, at least in this early going of his hockey career, as he crosses, I don't know, which ocean would you cross, the Atlantic or the Pacific, to come to
the Atlantic?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that, Mike. We appreciate your avionic itinerary and your travel list. Okay, so what'll happen is he's going to come over here, and he's going to have to adapt to the North American game, the game at the AHL level, the Kyle Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, Mike Babcock type of game that'll help you get through that pipeline towards the NHL. What does he need to do? A guy like Igor Ozhiganov, how can we be encouraged by his arrival over here? Does he just get into the lineup and Sheldon Keefe and the crew will work with him, or is he assigned some sort of a tutor, someone who can mentor him and help him personally develop into a North American style NHL defenseman?
Well, I think the Leafs have the advantage that they have Zaitsev on the team, who is, I mean, he's not friends with them, but they were teammates. I mean, not to say that there's any kind of animosity there. It's just that they don't really know each other that well, but they were teammates in Moscow. I remember Zaitsev being asked a question about him at the locker clean out, and he said, he's a good player, and he. You never. The thing is, you never know how a player adjusts to North America. I mean, if you take what happened with Callie Rosen and Andreas Borgman last year, and there was the question mark of Polak even being able to play, coming off the injury, and he was brought as a training camp invite. Rosen and Borgman fought for that sixth defenseman job out of training camp. Both of them made the cut, and then it was a sort of a rotation until Borgman won the job. And I have a feeling that Ozhiganov on a 1-year deal. It's a 1-year entry-level deal. The Leafs are going to wind up find out, how he can do right away. Now, if he doesn't earn his spot at training camp, then he plays with the Marlies. And, if he doesn't make the jump to the NHL, then he probably goes back to the KHL after a year. But I think they'll give him the opportunity. And I think they've, essentially said, okay, come over. We'll give you a chance. And he's 25 years old. This is not like a rookie. He's more of a finished product. So I think we'll know sort of right away whether he's good and up to the task of being in the NHL, or, it's like, for example, Victor Antipin with the Sabres. He signed out of the KHL. I think he was 24 years old. They barely used him, and the rumor is he's going back to the KHL. So you have to give him the opportunity to be able to prove himself, and maybe that's for a few games with the Marlies, but I would think that if he fulfills their expectations, he would be in the mix for one of the top 8 in terms of defensemen for the Leafs.
Your Ozhiganov preamble or warning seemed to indicate that he wasn't much ado about nothing, or isn't much ado about nothing, but you wouldn't want to, again, celebrate too hard that this guy is coming over to North America. So the 1-year deal, do you think was that a request on his part to say, look, I'm not coming over there to play for 3 years and toil away in the AHL. I believe I'm NHL ready. And the Maple Leafs are responding with, all right, here's your 1-year deal. Come have at it. If you don't do it, then whatever.
I think it was probably mutual, because the Leafs would essentially say, we want you to prove that you're good enough, and if you do, like Zaitsev, they signed Zaitsev to a 7-year deal, and I know there were some critics about that, but after Zaitsev had a very good rookie season, they signed him to the long-term deal, and I would think that with the Leafs, with Ozhiganov, if he plays well and he proves that he's capable, then they have options with him being an RFA. They could simply qualify him for a year and pay him that way, or if they want to lock him up long term. But then it also gives them the flexibility of not qualifying him or not having to terminate his deal if he wants to go back to the KHL. So I think it gives them a lot of flexibility.
This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James, along with Mike Jello. Some of these other cats who are already acclimatized to how the Marlies are struck, what Sheldon, how they can bring some of that play and translate it to an NHL level. Are you looking at any of these signings as guys who we are going to see make a real push for a roster spot come September?
Well, I think it's too soon for Engvall, and obviously too soon for Lindgren. Lindgren. He played 1 year in the Finnish league after playing in the second division in Sweden for a couple years. So I think he's one of these players that, he's 6 foot. I think he's 165 pounds. So he's not big, but he's fast and he makes good decisions. And he's one of those new NHL type defensemen. So, but those guys, they really have to be acclimated to the North American game and not make any mistakes. I know that in his first game with the Marlies, I think he made a couple really bad mistakes right off the bat. So I think he's going to be in the pipeline with the Marlies and develop that way. Engvall, if he has a good first half of the year next year, I mean, he's got the size, he's got the speed. It's possible there's opportunity on the wings with Toronto with the exodus of some veterans. I mean, I don't think he's going to make the team out of training camp, but I think he's on their radar now. And I think Lindholm, like I said, he's going to be in the mix with Gauthier and Altonen and whoever else they bring in for fourth line center. But I think that there's either a move, either Nylander to the middle for the Leafs to fill the third line spot vacated by Tyler Bozak, or maybe a signing in free agency, or maybe they bring Bozak back. So I mean, right now the center picture for the Leafs is sort of cloudy.
Amazing stuff, Mike. We're going to talk a little bit about potential trade partners for the Maple Leafs. They are clearly looking for defensemen. Are the Leafs eyeing a player in Carolina, and is it the player we think, or perhaps a surprise player who would really make a lot of Maple Leafs fans happy if they could pull off a deal? We'll get into that. Plus, we have some shout-outs, and the Toronto Marlies about to finally resume play. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms lay in wait game one of the Calder Cup semifinal at Ricoh Coliseum tomorrow afternoon. We'll get into it in just a moment. Stay with us. This is the Leafs Convo. The Leafs Convo started with Mike and Norm just a few years ago, but it's you who will take this podcast into the future thanks to your amazing support. We'd like to offer special recognition to Dr. Faisal Rahman of London, Ontario, for his dedication, commitment, and contribution to this podcast. Dr. Rahman has been a major backer of sports projects, ideas, and innovations throughout London and beyond. His involvement in helping the growth of the Leafs Convo is not only appreciated, but a true honor. Thank you, Dr. Faisal Rahman. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. We also wanted to say thanks to our contributors like Chris Parr of London, Ontario, who just submitted Leafs Convo logo art. You can see Chris's stuff right now on our YouTube page. And we're back. Mike Augello, Norman James. This is the Leafs Convo. Thank you so much. Are you listening on the Radio Public app? If not, download it, listen to us there, and then head over to our YouTube page and go have some fun with some of our listeners on the comment section. And obviously lots of stuff going on right now for the Leafs conversation. Hopefully some really big news to share with you in the days and weeks to come. Mike, we talked a little bit about Kyle Dubas' first real signings as general manager of the Maple Leafs. More ceremonial than something to truly celebrate, but perhaps he has some irons in the fire that will really get Leaf fans excited here in the very near term. Reading your stuff at hockeybuzz.com, always amazing. Your latest, is Falk a fit for the Leafs blue line needs? So is he?
Well, in my estimation, no, because first of all, he's 26 years old. He's a very good defenseman. He's former All-Star. He had a bad year last year, a minus 26. I think he had 31 points. It was his worst offensive year and worst plus minus in, I think, at least 4 years. I mean, he'd scored in double figures in goals the last 3 seasons and tailed off last year, which is, not, I mean, it's a little strange, but I think his role decreased a little bit with the advent of guys like Slavin and Pesci and Noah Hanifin. And that's the thing with Carolina. Their defensive depth is so ridiculous with those guys, those 4 plus, a former first round pick in Hayden Fleury and Jake Bean and Trevor Van Reen. And they have a ton of defensemen. And you can see, and based on the comments of Don Waddell, their new general manager, there is going to be changes made with the Hurricanes, and they need to improve up the middle. They need to improve in terms of scoring. They're looking for goaltending help, and they have defense to trade. And I think anybody in their right mind, especially the team that is, in desperate need of a top 4 defenseman like the Maple Leafs, will be talking to Don Waddell about any number of defensemen. But if you look at Falk, he's only got 2 years left in his contract. I think it's a little under $5 million a year. He's a right-hand shot. That's a fit. But in terms of the type of defenseman he is, he's more of the same of what the Leafs already have. He's smallish. He's offensive-minded. It's a right-handed and slightly better defensive version of Jake Gardiner, and that's not what they need.
Yeah, you point that out, Mike, really well. HockeyBuzz.com, you can find Mike's latest on this potential a trade partnership between the Leafs and the Carolina Hurricanes. Is Justin Falk a fit for the Leafs' blue line needs? Well, you don't seem to think that that's who the Maple Leafs should be going after. But you're right. If the Leafs were to target a defenseman on the Carolina blue line, 21-year-old Noah Hanifin would be a more likely target. Yum, yum, Mr. Augello.
Yeah, okay. This is the problem, and I've heard this from other insiders that that Falk has been on the Leafs radar for a little while, off and on. They made inquiries in previous years, and any defenseman that the Leafs are inquiring about, the first names that come out are names that the Leafs obviously don't want to trade. Names like Nylander or, Marner was probably mentioned in the past, but that's a non-starter now. And now it moves to Nylander, Connor Brown, and, Kasperi Kapanen, and, really good young players who are either at the end or just in the middle of their entry-level deals that are cheap, but that are good. And that's understandable, especially for a team like Carolina that's looking for offense. But that they were asking for that for Falk, who's got 2 years left, and then is an unrestricted free agent. And if I'm the Leafs, I'm not trading a 21 or 22-year-old forward for a 26-year-old defenseman who can walk in 2 years. I want a defenseman who's at the same age and they can hold on to for at least 4, maybe 5 seasons, and that is Hanifin. And he's big. He's not a right-hand shot. He's a left-hand shot, but he's big. He's good offensively. He's the total package. And as a cherry on top of the sundae, this is not the guy that, Mike Babcock and Kyle Dubas are going to go to war over because 3 years ago, Mike Babcock wanted them to take Noah Hanifin over Mitch Marner and was stopped from doing that, or was told that's not going to happen by Mark Hunter. So if they all of a sudden go out and try to trade for Noah Hanifin, I think Babcock would be on board.
Incredible. Mark Hunter, who knows what his future is with the organization? I don't know if you have any updates on that. What is he going to stay on the farm? Is he going to? We'll talk about it at another point. But we can thank Mark Hunter for the rest of our days for convincing the Maple Leafs, Mike Babcock, and whomever to go ahead and take Mitch Marner over Noah Hanifin. Yes, Noah Hanifin is a fantastic player, and he could be a future Leaf, and he could be that top 4 defenseman, as you suggest that the Maple Leafs are needing and could land. But at the expense of Mitch Marner, come on. I mean, you'd like to have them both. Just let's thank our lucky stars that Mark Hunter was able to convince the intelligentsia at 40 Bay to take Mitch Marner, and I don't think there would be much pushback on that. I mean, that's just me digressing, but heck, why not? In terms of getting someone like Noah Hanifin, I mean, there are so many positives. There are so many reasons why you'd want to do it, and he would elevate. It would probably have the Leafs forget thinking about making a massive splash in FA to I don't know, maybe sign somebody for major money down the line. And I mean, you've got your guy through trade. The question is, who do you deal for someone like Hanifin? Because if the Carolina Hurricanes are wanting to make changes and they're willing to trade out a blue chip defenseman like that, high pick, they're going to want a king's ransom. Do the Maple Leafs have what it takes, the materials, the pieces required to pull off a transaction of such magnitude?
I think they do. Now, the question is whether there is a willingness on the part of Kyle Dubas to move the players or the package of players to get a Noah Hanifin. Now, of Nylander is out there, and the thing is that both players, Hanifin and Nylander, are restricted free agents, and it's a situation where the Leafs, do they want to pay him? Do they want to sign him to the long-term deal for anywhere between $5.5 to $6.5 million on a 5, 6, 7-year deal? And that would pretend if they think he's a center, which I don't know. I'm still. You get mixed signals from the Leaf organization and from Babcock whether he thinks Nylander is capable of playing center. If they do, then they're keeping him because Bozak is gone, and then you could simply move Nylander into the middle and off of Matthews' line. But I'm not convinced that they think he's a center, but maybe other teams would believe that he is. So that, that status affects their willingness to potentially trade him or not. If not, it would probably take a significant package. And, a guy like Casper Kapanen, whose father played for that organization.
Yep.
Back in Hartford, and I think he played on that Cup winning team, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm fairly sure that he played on the team in 2006. But he would be a piece. Now I know that Dubas really likes Casper Kapanen, so but you're going to have to trade something to get something. I think their first round pick is in play, as I've said on previous shows. And the one thing that I think could be an enticement, and I don't have a great value for him as a player, but that's just because I've seen his injury history with the Marlies. But this was a coming of age year for Garrett Sparks. He was the AHL's best goaltender. He put up a great amount of it was great victories, and he's been their goalie in the first couple rounds of the Calder Cup playoffs. He's a guy. He's got another year left in his contract. He would have to clear waivers. He's probably a guy that the Leafs, if they're not sold that he's the backup next year for Freddie Anderson, which I don't think they think he is, that he could be a piece that Carolina would be interested in as part of a deal, because Cam Ward's a UFA and Scott Darling was a disaster there last year. So maybe Garrett Sparks would be part of a package deal for in a deal for a defenseman with Carolina.
What do you think of Mike's dreamed up trade scenario between the Leafs and the Canes? Noah Hanifin coming to Toronto, a huge package of Maple Leafs going back to Carolina, potentially. William Nylander, is Garrett Sparks in that mix? Kasperi Kapanen, does he go? What do you think about it? On our Leafs Convo YouTube page, the place is buzzing right now. Add to the excitement, add to the thrill. Go and leave some comments on the page right now. This podcast will be uploaded to the site. You can check out the slideshow and then leave some comments. Let's get a real good discussion going. Again, these are just concepts and scenarios and ideas. Nobody is saying that the wonderful William Nylander has to be sent out of town, but at some point there might Kyle Dubas may be confronted with a trade package that would require someone like William Nylander being shipped off in order to get a player of his ilk, whether on defense, whether at forward, to return to Toronto to help make this team much better. This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norman James, along with Mike Augello. We're going to talk about the Toronto Marlies in just a few minutes, but we have a special segment for you to sink your teeth into, and we'll do that. Have you seen our new logo yet? It's terrific. It has an old school retro vibe to it. Now, if we only knew who sent it to us. A big thanks to Anonymous from Toronto, who gifted the Leafs Convo with its newest branding representation. Whoever you are, Anonymous, we're grateful. See the logo anytime on our YouTube channel. And one more segment with our friend Michael Augello. So game one of the between Lehigh Valley and the Toronto Marlies, 4:00 start Saturday. That's tomorrow at Ricoh Coliseum. Place should be packed. Both teams will be rusty, considering they've had extensive layoffs between now and the completion of their second round series. What are you expecting here, Mike? Are you expecting more of the same from the Marlies? Perhaps a little bit surprised by the visitors. We should account for at least a good part of the game to be a pair of professional squads trying to find their bearings, right?
I mean, Lehigh has played very well in the first two rounds. They got by Charlotte in 5 games, including that quintuple overtime monstrosity that happened with Alex Lyon making 94 saves. I mean, this is going to be a tough series. Lehigh is going to be a little shorthanded on the blue line. Sam Moran and Travis Sanheim, who are NHL-level defensemen, are expected both to be out with injuries that they suffered earlier in the playoffs. So that's going to be a challenge. And Lyon is playing very well, but I think the Marlies are definitely going to be considered the favorite since they had the AHL's best record, and they've dominated at home. So I think that will give them an advantage. But you're talking about two teams in the Calder Cup final. I thought a couple of years ago when the Leafs core group now was with the Marlies then, Nylander, Brown, Hyman. I thought that team was going to win the Calder Cup, and they ran into a really tough Hershey squad. So it's not guaranteed, but I would give the Marlies an advantage in the series.
Considering everything the Marlies have accomplished this AHL hockey season, does it almost feel like it's their destiny to complete it with a Calder Cup championship? They're so good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about destiny. I just know that, they're good enough. They've got good coaching. They've great goaltending. If Sparks falters, Calvin Pickard is an NHL goaltender, so they're deep there. Their defense is solid. They've received some late season additions, and Carl Grunstrom and Engvall that have really helped them out. So, and they haven't lost anybody of a major consequence to injury. So I think they're in position, but like I said, nothing is guaranteed.
And if it's the Marlies who get through, who would you rather in the final, Texas or Rockford?
Well, I mean, and I don't know as much of the constitution of either one of their rosters, but I would say Texas simply because they lost to Texas a few years ago in the Calder Cup playoffs, and just that little revenge factor might be motivation enough. Mm-hmm. Plus, I think they would rather go to near Austin, Texas for the Calder Cup final than Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah, and Austin, Texas is actually a decent place, I hear. Yeah. Actually, I've been there many times. I went to school in Texas playing baseball, and boy, Austin is like an oasis.
Great music.
It's an oasis stuck in the middle of a... Anyway, let's not get too... let's not get too political. Last thing for it, then we've got to wrap it up. Why should Maple Leaf fans care about what the Marlies are doing in between now and then when the actual Leafs do some real substantial stuff in the offseason?
I mean, I think simply because these players are going to be on this team within the next couple of years. I mean, not guys like Ben Smith or Chris Mueller who have served good roles as veteran players, or a guy like Martin Marincin who's playing out his contract and hopefully will never be seen again. But the guys like Grunstrom and Janssen and possibly Mira Alton and Timothy Liljegren, and this is valuable experience especially for a guy like Liljegren who comes in as an 18-year-old. He's playing bottom pairing minutes on the Marlies, but he's playing valuable minutes. And he's played in the World Junior, and he potentially can play in the Calder Cup final in 1 year, and he's just 18 years old. So that experience is invaluable.
You mean Martin Marincin wasn't the second coming of Scott Stevens or Ray Bourque? I thought within a microcosm, his numbers were right up there with Doug Harvey's.
Yeah, he missed by that much.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Mike, it's so great to podcast with you. This is, well, not the beginning. We are on our way, and we are making strides every single time you and I collab for a show. Can't wait till the next one, Mr. Augello. Have a good one in beautiful Buffalo, New York.
Thanks, Norman.
All right, Leafs fam, we are done. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to download the Radio Public Player app. Listen to future episodes of the Leafs Convo through that platform. It would mean so much to us. Also, check out our YouTube channel. It is a living, breathing entity. Like it, subscribe to it, leave a comment. That would be cool too. You want to talk to me on social media? Go ahead and do it. At I Am Sportsheart, at the Leafs Convo. You can reach out to Mike Augello at Mike in Buffalo. We're just talking Leafs, man. For Mike, I'm Norman James. Until the next time we converse, we out.